Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished entrepreneur from North Carolina, USA, Mr. Avishai Greenstein. Avishai, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Avishai is the owner and chief executive officer of Bamboozle Home, which explores the intersection of culinary art and design with technology and science. Bamboo fiber became the first ever sustainable and biodegradable plastic that was both cost effective and dishwasher safe. So, Abhishek, fascinating journey you've had. So, let me start by asking you, tell me about your own journey into entrepreneurship and what inspired you to combine your passion for culinary arts with design and sustainability.
So I started my journey into entrepreneurship at university, actually.
Uh-huh.
I had the opportunity to continue the work I was doing at a company for an internship. They had to continue the work.
Hmm.
And at that point, it kind of dawned on me that I could just continue the work and charge for that, charge for it
Right.
outside of the
Yes.
company. So I hired some people around me in university and we started this company and we had it for about 4 or 5 years. After that, during the '08 recession, I took a detour into the culinary field. There was a lot going on there, and had a great time there for a few years before
Uh-huh.
I joined here
Hmm.
and started this company here and this brand. The I've always been interested in sustainability. I think it started in college when gas prices in the United States started rising very high.
Hmm.
Uh, I was a new driver at the time, so one plus one equals two in your head. You start asking yourself questions. Where does this come from? Why do we use it?
Hmm.
You start with the question, why is this so expensive for me? And then if you
Hmm.
ask any more questions, you realize
Hmm.
we may have an issue on our hands moving forward. Will we not have gas anymore at some point? So initially, I was extremely interested in energy. And as time went on, as the opportunities came my way, I saw this interesting opportunity with actually my uncle, who was working with a factory at the time, trying to turn an existing product into something more sustainable. And that is the point when I joined up. It was, I wouldn't be in plastics if it wasn't for the sustainable aspect of it. And from that point on, it's been the evolution of uh, our experience and then our passion to constantly do better.
Wow, what a journey. So tell me a little bit more about Bamboozle and why did you choose bamboo as the foundation for your materials?
So at the time, these are still the early days. We were tasked with converting melamine factories into something better, something that's more
Hmm.
usable,
Hmm.
more marketable. And melamine does have a certain amount of wood pulp content, and the easiest thing to do is move from wood pulp to something more sustainable. That was kind of the first step, and
Hmm.
bamboo was that thing. It is fast growing. You don't kill the plant by cutting it down.
Hmm.
And then instead of taking virgin bamboo and grinding it down, we actually take the offcuts. So all the ugly pieces that are not usable for furniture, and then we turn them into sawdust essentially, and then we use that as an adjunct in the material.
Hmm.
So as we continue to evolve, we use the lessons we learned there to
Hmm.
move the percentage of sustainable material inside of the total product
Hmm.
higher and higher and higher.
Fascinating, fascinating. And what were there any challenges that you faced when you started to work with bamboo fiber?
Plenty of challenges.
Hmm.
The challenges are there's twofold. One is the engineering challenge, which is you're trying to do something that's not the easiest.
Hmm.
Where by moving ourselves into more complex materials and things that maybe weren't traditional to do, our margin for error becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So you
Hmm.
end up having to, I would say, train, but really they develop a skill set with engineers to get that mix just right, the heat temperatures right. When we move to our newest material, the material that we currently have called astrik, The raw materials involved with that are extremely temperamental.
Mm.
So when they're exposed to too much heat, the flow isn't right. Every one of these little issues comes
Mm.
out with a product that doesn't work on the other
Mhm.
end, and
Mhm.
we go back to the beginning and try again. The challenge is really the fact that while sustainability is important in everybody's hearts,
Mm.
or most people, I would say, at the same time, it's people's daily lives that actually are matter to
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
So we have to constantly put these two things into balance. The usability, can it go in the dishwasher? If I drop it on the ground, do I have to care for it in a very specific way? Those are the things that
Mm.
change people's opinions about the product. Of course, the
Mm.
price as well.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we want to push sustainability forward. So there are things you can do to make things very, very sustainable, but at the
Mhm.
same time, they become unusable to the average person. And if there's no adoption, the technology isn't really being utilized.
Amazing. And how has your background in culinary arts, and for my viewers and listeners, tell us what is culinary arts as well. How has this background had an impact on the aesthetic and functional design of Bamboozle products?
Oh, it absolutely has. Culinary arts is just a very nice term we use for cooking,
Hmm.
for professional cooking.
Yeah.
I think there's there's some things about that I learned in culinary arts about the
Mm.
processes. Cooking is chemistry, cooking is engineering, cooking
Mm.
is taking ingredients, mixing together, and coming up with fantastic usable product at the very
Mm.
end. If you want to
Mm.
just use those terms for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So the processes that I go through, the philosophy of the process,
Mm.
is something that kind of became instilled in me.
Mm.
Something that maybe in a more kind of cerebral degree in college, you don't think about those things.
Mm.
But then when you do actual physical work, you think about this has to happen first, then this has to happen, then
Mm.
this has to happen. So that helps me a lot in understanding and knowing which questions to ask. The other end is I'm in housewares now, so culinary arts directly connects to it.
Mhm.
By that, I know what works, what doesn't work, what I
Mm.
would want to use. The one wonderful thing about going into cooking
Mm.
is that even if you don't continue to practice it as a paying job, you continue to do it every day anyway.
Right.
At least that's what your family wants you to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you can take the product and you get to use it, and you get to say this design works, this design doesn't work.
Mm.
A lot of things are designed in a way that they've always been designed.
Mm.
And so the home cook will kind of bend over backwards to use it just because that's how it is.
Right.
For some reason, a spice jar and a measuring spoon
Mm.
never fit together before.
Mm.
Um, and or the measuring spoon didn't have a long enough handle.
Yeah.
So these are all little things
Mm.
that when you're designing a product from the ground up are very simple to add to the product.
Mm.
But because maybe for some brands aesthetics is the most important thing,
Mm.
and for some brands toughness is the most important thing, usability is also something that
Mm.
is high on the list. And there's many brands that kind of follow
Mm.
that thought pattern. But for me, my particular experience helped me focus on those things every day.
Yes. Every time I go into a supermarket or pick up something, for cooking, I could have never imagined the amount of science that seems to be going behind it. And thank you for sharing this with me and my audience. My next question, Avishai, is how do you integrate manufacturing technology with sustainable practices to scale production?
Yeah, so I think in deep manufacturing, there's a lot of processes that are either ready to be sustainable or they're quite sustainable already, only because sustainability meets efficiency at that point.
Yeah.
The factory does not want to spend the extra energy.
Mm.
That's money. You never want to do that. The factory doesn't want to throw away material. Again, that's money. So those things have been developed already way before I entered the scene. moving from heat compression molding, which is what the bamboo fiber uses, to injection molding reduced the amount of energy required significantly. Using the right raw materials is, of course, where I really focus on a
Hmm.
daily basis. Where those materials come from, how are those materials made, how long the trips are to go from place to place to place.
Hmm.
So, on top of it all, there's certain things that are not thought of, and it surprised me that people are not thinking about them more, which
Hmm.
is packaging. Packaging a crazy amount of waste gets generated from packaging,
Right.
and so you can make plastic packaging, for example. It looks very good, but utility wise, it lasts for about 5 seconds. You
Hmm.
see the product on the shelf, you say, "Oh, this is nice packaging." You buy it, and then you immediately discard it. So
Hmm.
you have to find ways for that packaging to be as least impactful as possible.
Yeah.
My thought process is always impact divided by utility. That's
Hmm.
always the case with sustainability.
Yeah.
So if the more impact you create, the more you have to use the product in order for it to be worth it to be used. So our job here is to reduce the impact as much as possible and increase the utility as much as possible.
Hmm.
And in some products, like the packaging, there's such a minor utility in it. It is, of course, a very important utility. It gets
Hmm.
the product sold, but we have to be very careful. So, for example, we have moved to completely plastic-free packaging,
Hmm.
and you'd be surprised at how much more difficult that is than it sounds,
Right.
because there's so many little pieces of plastic and packaging that have to be taken away, and
Hmm.
also the manufacturers don't understand why you want to do this.
Hmm.
It'd be better if we wrapped it in plastic. And I said to them, we don't want to be wrapped in
Correct.
plastic. It's the
Correct.
most useless plastic that can exist.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely against plastic, but if it's used in the right spaces, then it's very beneficial. And
Absolutely.
as a wrapper that's going to last 5 minutes is not beneficial.
Absolutely right. Well said. Well said. My next question is that when we talk about astrik, how has technology advanced your ability to experiment with and perfect plant-based materials like astrik?
So I got lucky, I think, with Astrik because the pieces are on the shelf,
Hmm.
and allowing us to experiment. Now, that experiment is can be costly because when you're doing the experiment, that machine is not working. So there's a huge opportunity cost to experimentation. And also you never know how long that machine is going to be offline because you never
Yeah.
know when the experiment will be over. So in terms of technology, there's a lot of technologies that occurred way before I was here.
Hmm.
The move from heat compression to injection molding that happened in the 80s. The development of PLA, polylactic acid, as a biopolymer that happened long before I was involved.
Hmm.
We just took those off the shelf things and put them together in
Hmm.
a novel way. Moving forward, however, the lessons that I've learned, the deep lessons that I've learned, will be continue to be applied into kind of the next generation.
Hmm.
The biggest lesson I learned about technology and consumer product is how often unbelievable technology is developed
Hmm.
and how little of it ends up being commercialized,
Well said.
which is so sad.
Hmm.
I've made it a habit. With the wonders of LinkedIn, you see somebody's name on a paper, you see somebody's name on a press release, you send them a message, hopefully they get back to you. I have spoken to many people at this point, and I asked them, okay, so when can I use it? I want to make product from it as soon as possible. And they
Hmm.
look at me like, well, what are you talking about? Look,
Hmm.
we're research scientists. We don't want to make product. And that, for the amount of amazing effort that's going on in the scientific community around sustainability, I see it as my job all the way at the very other end as a product designer and marketer to
Hmm.
pull that all the way so it can actually materialize as a product in somebody's hands.
Hmm.
And that's what we hope to continue doing.
Well said. But the other problem, Avishai, with sustainability is a balance between cost-effective, attractive products and sustainability. How do
Yes.
you strike this balance for Bamboozle?
So It's not so much that the balance is struck with cost effectiveness.
Mm,
It's that we have to find ways to reduce the cost in the long term
mm,
and serve the demographics that can appreciate a higher end product at
mm,
first and then slowly pull it down towards where we need to go.
mm,
The first of all, we can reduce product costs by economies of scale and more efficient transportation and where the product is manufactured and great partnerships, trying to reduce the cost in every single way so the final cost to the customer is
mm,
as low as it possibly can be. But there is a limit to that. In every phase of technology, there is a limit to that. So, for
mm,
example, with bamboo fiber, the limit was it has it is very manual labor intensive. There's a lot
mm,
of pieces that you have to shave off the edge when you're done making it.
mm,
So there's essentially a human cost that could never be further reduced. In fact,
mm.
human cost only goes up over time, which
Right.
is generally a good thing. The next in astrik, the the fundamental problem is that PLA is expensive to make,
Mhm.
and on top of that, it's of limited quantity. I was told this was not a good day for me. I was told that if we were to say we want another plant of this to make this material,
Mm,
another manufacturing facility to make the material, it would take many years and there isn't a big enough demand right now to start planning to put
mm,
that factory down.
mm, mm,
So I knew that I can continue to scale, and I have not reached scale by any means. I can
mhm,
continue to scale, but there is a roof to this, and there's essentially nothing I can possibly do in the short
mm.
term to affect that roof.
Very
And
interesting.
that's why the next material needs to hit all those things plus a few more in
Mm,
order for us to get to a one-to-one cost with traditional plastics.
amazing. My next question is with regard to culinary traditions and culture. You
Mm.
know, in India, for example, we use our fingers to eat. And there are similar cultures all over. How do you think culinary traditions and culture influence sustainable product design?
Oh, it's huge.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people ask me why housewares,
Mm.
why sustainability in housewares,
Yeah.
and I think first of all, taking high-tech materials and making the simplest, most
Mm.
ancient forms from them
Mm.
is a great marriage
Mm.
because it means that I can do the most basic things first and learn from my mistakes. The other reason housewares is so important is that, just as you said, it's part of our culture.
Mm.
It's how we receive food. And even if you're not paying attention to what you're eating, and I
Yeah.
think that everybody should pay very deep attention and enjoy it, it is this ubiquitous thing that's in our lives every day. You
Mm.
may not pay attention to your plates
Yeah.
on a daily basis, but
Mm.
they're there for you every single day, day
Mm.
after day after day.
Mm.
Whatever utensils you use or no utensils, these are things that are inherently core to your being.
Mm.
They are memories that you have from the first memory you have when you're so young. So to me, for sustainability at least, the way that sustainability can enter the home the fastest and have the most impact is
Mm.
is in housewares.
Mm.
In terms of culinary traditions and product design, I think it's exciting because that means every market has something different for it.
Mm.
There's no reason to have ubiquity, and I think that you can see that across the world. Many cuisines that are considered foreign to where you are on the planet
Mm.
are
Mm.
extremely popular because people
Right.
want variety, people want the
Mm.
difference, people want to experience a different way, a different thing to eat, different way to eat,
Mm.
etc.
Mm.
And in housewares, that is a very popular thing to want because that means there's a larger variety of products that we can tackle in a larger variety of markets.
Mm. Well said. So I should have time for two more questions. My next question is, what strategies do you use to ensure the sustainability becomes a lifestyle choice for your customers?
The main strategy is make it almost invisible.
Hmm.
I always kind of relate it to the change between leaded gasoline and unleaded gasoline. It changed, but most people didn't notice. They just went to the pump just like they did every other
Yeah.
day and filled
Yeah.
up their car.
Yeah.
But the health impact of doing that
Was
was
huge.
monumental.
Absolutely.
And that's the way I see it too. Early on, I'm going to have to depend on people who are making the right choice because they want to make the right choice. Over the long period of time, as our materials kind of stand toe to toe on par with traditional plastics, they do in every way but cost at this point in time. Once they become cost effective, then there's going to be very little reason to go to the traditional. In
Correct.
fact, would rather use plants to make our materials than to use fuel, especially as we move to more and more expensive fuel as time goes on. So we believe that we'll see this adoption if we are willing, if we get to meet the demands.
Very interesting. And my last question for you, how do you envision expanding the impact of Bamboozle beyond composting and dinnerware?
I think what we're doing is laying a groundwork, and both a cultural groundwork, in that if you can trust our product, that means you will consider other sustainable products as something you can trust. And I think I'm not the only one obviously doing this. Many people are doing this. I think if you look at electric cars, for example, it used to be this thing that was thought of as terrible, and now it's considered extremely luxurious. And that allows us to imagine a world that's not the same as today, that works for us. As terms of what Bamboozle can do by itself, how we see us continuing to develop is by continuing to chase this next material, this next material, this next material. We will come up with more ways, or empower at least. Maybe it's not our material. Maybe it's somebody else's material that we end up using for some reason. By supporting them, even if it's not us, by supporting them, we're empowering them to do the research and push the material to the next level. And that's really what we need. The way I see it is, if anytime you patronize anything, you're giving it a slight bit more power. And if we can take our customer base and point them towards a more sustainable direction, then we're creating a virtuous cycle where we trust them, they make something better, we adopt it, and so on and so forth.
Very well said. And on that note, Avishai, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey.
Pleasure.
We had an amazing conversation on bamboo fiber, on Bamboozle, on sustainability, on technology, and of course the whole issue of how does one manage the cost part with sustainability and product design. You seem to have been able to balance all three of these. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.